Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rob. Gabby, thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, thank you to our amazing sponsor, GitHub. I think that GitHub and AI just go hand in hand. So we really welcome you and your team and so glad to have you here. So before we dive into kind of all this connection between AI and job seekers, talent acquisition, I thought we would get an intro from you. Do you want to start out telling us a little bit more about yourself, your journey to enter GitHub, and what your work entails there?
Yeah, I would love to. So I actually had the pleasure of starting at GitHub, what feels like so long ago, but over in March of 2022. And my role is really focused on designing, delivering, and implementing both at a strategic and operational level talent acquisition focused hiring programs that really deliver exceptional candidate experiences while we continue to build an employee base that represents not just who we are, but the communities that we support and live in and really just touch on a daily basis. While I have been in the talent acquisition space for a number of years, my prior experience is actually in the world of finance and consulting, right? But looking back on my career, I found myself in roles that were all about new initiatives or new ways of working in organizations, very much so the newness of things. And that resonated with me and ultimately what led me to GitHub, because we are changing the world with what we are doing.
I love that. I love that. And that is so true. I have really seen GitHub kind of come out with so many new technologies. And then I know it's a place where everybody wants to work. So when you're designing a program for talent to come to GitHub, you're really thinking of people that want to be working for a leader in the space. So thanks for that intro. So you really see kind of firsthand what it takes. Can you share your insights on what it takes to be a stellar candidate today in the tech industry, especially in your context there at GitHub and designing these programs?
Yeah. So what's amazing about GitHub, and I would even venture to say many companies today, is that there is no single answer to this question, right? While yes, there are certain requirements, for example, experience in writing code standard markup languages, coupled with working knowledge of web application frameworks, but that's really only step one, right? At GitHub, as an open source and an asynchronous environment, being comfortable collaborating with teammates to figure out what work needs to be done, and then splitting up the work, doing it, leaning in, that is a term that we use very heavily here at GitHub, is really that next step and really what is the core of who we are, right? In addition to that, being passionate about building tools that are inclusive and impactful to the projects that we support, because it's relied on by millions of developers. It's enabling billions of code and just billions of organization success, and it's creating connections around the world, honestly, further beyond I could even imagine at times. And those are the components that make an individual stellar at GitHub, because that's what makes GitHub stellar.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that answer. And that is so true that y'all are really kind of developing the base level code that the world is using. So it's not just what you're working on for GitHub, it's what you're working for the world of developers. Y'all out there listening in the audience, if you have a question for Gabby, don't be shy, drop it in the chat and we will try to get to your answers during the session. So I want to see those questions come in for Gabby and GitHub. All right, Gabby. Okay, so we've talked about how quickly this landscape is changing and how you and your team are often working kind of on new and novel programs. So let's kind of connect this back to AI. So what are you seeing in terms of AI tools or trends? And then what do you think, particularly in the talent acquisition space, what should candidates be aware of to really, set themselves apart in the job search?
Yes, for sure. So I have a saying that, or at least it's more of a mantra that I live by, where it's said by Abraham Lincoln, and it's give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. all right? And why that is so important is because the research entering into the world of AI is as important, if not more important, than the actual applications, right? In that it's important to know the key concepts and terminologies that are being used today. Like what is AI? What does it actually mean? And when we're thinking about the future of it, in what terms, in what components, in what discipline, in what space, like understanding that is going to be very, very key, because while a company may develop AI tools or may have a focus or be moving towards AI, their exact scope may differ. And knowing what you're interested in and kind of sort of what you want to go down further towards is going to be key in really making those really critical decisions, right? The second step, or the second kind of sort of tier, I would say, is what are a lot of these organizations facing, right? Or what are they trying to solve for? The biggest thing that is important for us as well as other organizations is like responsible AI. It can be a great tool to build and also a really, questionable tool if you're not using it in the best terms and in the best ways. So understanding what is it that a company is looking to do with their products, how they're looking to build and create their products, and then ultimately what features are they putting in place, either as a safeguard, as an enhancement, to really further their ability to further their impact to the community. And then who are the companies actually doing this work, right? So now that you kind of sort of know what you want to do, you know how to talk the talk and walk the walk, who's doing it and whose mission and vision do you really align to? Because that's what's ultimately going to put you in a place to be like, all right, I want to be there, and it's going to be such an authentic experience, not just going through your recruitment process or even joining, but ultimately the deliverable that you would be able to produce is going to be exponentially just magical in comparison when all of those pieces start to align.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love first kind of that recommendation for job seekers to just really understand, learn more. It's not enough just we see so much AI kind of stickered on everything, but you really, especially as a job seeker, have to go so much deeper than that and know kind of where can I really set myself apart? What is my expertise?
Yeah.
And
I would also add there's so many disciplines within the world of AI, right? So you have like, and it's really on a spectrum, right? So you have the cognitive computing all the way to NLP, which is the natural language processing. So like understanding the different disciplines, understanding like where those disciplines even show up and how they are similar, different, nuanced, yet very much so interconnected with one another is really key.
Yeah. And I love also what you mentioned about responsible AI. I was listening to a podcast. I think it was a Hard Fork podcast, which is really good, but I hadn't realized like all the things that could go wrong with AI until I started really like, oh, this could actually be really, really dangerous. So I think that kind of really, we need, as a job seeker, you need to think about like, what are we building with the AI? How are we putting those guardrails in there to make sure that we're building a product that is safe for users? So thanks for flagging that. Yeah. We're getting some questions in the chat. Before we kind of move forward, I thought we could touch on those. So we have a question from Samara, and they ask that we see that GitHub is building a lot of new features and tools using AI, and they ask are those tools improving accessibility for disabled users or people with a disability? I mean, maybe that's not your exact field, but do you have any insight there?
I do, and this is actually something that is near and dear to my heart. So yes, we are always improving, always enhancing, and always iterating on our tools. And a few of the features that we've most recently launched is coding by voice. So what that actually allows us to do is for individuals that may be vision impaired or may need additional accessible features, they're actually able to code with their voice. All right, that's one thing that off the top of my head comes to mind, but that is just one of many features that GitHub has embedded in their tool, and it's just the tip of the iceberg with where we are looking to go and ultimately who we are building for. The great thing about GitHub is that we are a platform that is used by so many individuals on so many different levels of their coding career, as well as just in their life. So having a tool and a platform that enables anyone at any level, at any skill scope, whether like anyone, right, to be able to leverage the platform, benefit from the platform, and ultimately feel the success of the platform is who we are, and ultimately who we want to continue to be.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that example. I met a vision impaired coder last year at our Invisible and Disability Summit. And I just, I was like, how does that work? How do you write code? So that is so cool that y'all are developing tools to make that easier. And we have another question from the audience. So an audience member asked, should people upskill with AI, while they're studying, while they're on that learning journey, so they can help future-proof their careers? Do you have any kind of tips for people there as they're looking to upskill?
I would say yes. It's very important to, one, just continue to learn and have that continuous learning mindset. And if there's one thing that I think we've heard a lot of today is that AI is the future of our of just not just GitHub, but a lot of companies that are really looking to progress and looking to grow, looking to iterate, so on and so forth. Having those skills in your toolbox is always going to be beneficial, right? And not to say that you need to be the master of AI, because is that ever really going to happen? Like, things are always going to continue to evolve and always continue to iterate, but understanding back to like key terminologies and terms, right? Like what are companies doing with AI? Like, how are they using it? How are they operating within it? I think is so key, and being able to follow along and even being able to talk and being able to think about like, okay, how does this actually apply to maybe where I want to go in the future, or how what is being developed today is in alignment or like disalignment, right, for what I want to do, is going to be really, really key. And but knowing the foundational understanding of artificial intelligence, tools, disciplines, all of that is really what is going to give you the foundational block to stand on to even go up, down, right, left, and center from there.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And on that note, so kind of really learning more about AI, upskilling, thanks for those tips. One thing I am seeing, we're getting a lot of questions in the chat. We're definitely going to get to those, but I have a question for Gabby. I have seen all over social media, use an AI tool like ChatGPT to write your cover letter, use it to improve your resume. And, from the talent acquisition space, I wanted to ask you, can y'all tell when candidates are using an AI tool to kind of help them with all those job seeker, materials that you need to create? And kind of what's your opinion of that?
Yeah, great question. So personally, GitHub has recently, well, seems recent, but it's been in the works for some time, developed a tool called GitHub Copilot, right? And what GitHub Copilot is ultimately a AI pair programming tool and software that helps you deliver on the code that you are looking to write, so on and so forth. So with that being said, for me to say, hey, don't use that is kind of sort of, counterintuitive, because, hey, we developed a tool to help you do it, right? Where I think, and the extra mile that goes into that is the logic behind what it is that you are asking any tool to do, and understanding that a part of artificial intelligence is also taking in information that you are feeding to it, synthesizing that information, and then building the deliverable as a result of what it's given, right? So there does have to be some logic and some guidance that is put into place whenever you are using any type of AI-based tool, right? And as we think about just how to use it to enhance your recruitment process, hey, I think it is a great value add if you are a type of person that, hey, words are hard, right? Being able to put a sentence together that captures all the essence that you need, but is not 300 words long, can be very difficult. And an AI tool, if you put in the correct parameters, the logic, can help you construct that in a way that delivers the point, and also, hey, is not a 15-page dissertation. So I do think using it responsibly is always going to be in value add, right? But when you don't use it responsibly, you end up in a difficult situation in your concept is not being displayed in the best manner, or hey, like, you kind of sort of wanted this job, but the resume output that you got doesn't really align to this job because we didn't put those parameters in the prompt. So it's really important to use it to your benefit and not to your detriment.
Yeah, that is so true. I have seen some really bad emails that ChatGPT writes. So it's definitely kind of learning how to use these tools and not just, handling, uploading like whatever they spit out. There's definitely like an art and kind of a time that you need to put into learning them. And I say that definitely from my non-technical background. So I want to ask you kind of one more question as it relates to, demonstrating to candidates on that job source for GitHub. And then we've got a couple audience questions I want to make sure that we touch on as well. So audience, we're coming for you. So one thing I know you wanted to touch on, Gabby, is candidates' commitment to open source contributions. Obviously, open source is a huge part of GitHub and your community. So how, if you have any kind of recommendations for candidates, how can they demonstrate their commitment to open source contributions, or how have they, showing how they've collaborated on platforms like GitHub? How can that enhance their profile and increase their chance of being noticed by companies like GitHub or other places they might be searching?
Yeah, that is a really great question. So first and foremost, GitHub's website is a place to start. There you can find current open source projects, some repos that are trending to, stay up to date on all things GitHub, as well as just open source related. You'll also be able to see some collections and some events, right? And ultimately, whatever you do, whatever you work on, highlight that in your portfolio and your GitHub profile. Like, put it all together, write it in tandem, have it really be the full picture of who you are as not just a applicant, a candidate, but rather as a person, right? Then it's also able, and for a lot of our events, GitHub also hosts a lot of open to the public events, such as our very own GitHub universe that is, a month or so out from today. So things like that, you can get involved. You can go on site if you are local to the area in which GitHub is hosting Universe, but you can also join live web streams, like join different groups that are tapped into that. And then that also gives you some FaceTime with leaders in a non-interview session, because you're hearing from them, you're hearing them speak, you're hearing all of the cool things that are happening in their space. And if you're lucky enough to be in a session with them or in a smaller group with them, like, hey, like, I've now just connected with someone that, is a leader at GitHub, and I'm not in an interview, but hey, I've just built an organic, genuine connection that is going to ultimately last a lifetime.
Yeah, always good to be increasing that network. So y'all that are listening in, GitHub Universe coming up next month, go to their website and check that out. That sounds like an amazing event. And I just know stuff really basic. I know like a lot of companies ask, put your GitHub handle, share that so we can really see what you're doing there. I know that that is essential for a lot of tech positions. So having like a robust kind of examples of what you've done there. Awesome. So I want to make sure we get to a couple audience questions because they are, really fabulous questions. So we have one, we had one. So this must be the second question that the person asked about, if you asked about AI tools at GitHub for disabilities. And the person that asked the question mentioned that they were part of an EDI program at GitHub, and that GitHub listened to them about how the features that were being built needed to be accessible. So y'all, it sounds like y'all are really listening to disabled developers. And Gabby, I just wanted to, do you have any more insights to hear about that mission? It sounds like a really kind of affirming program for disabled developers.
Yeah, so here at GitHub, we have a commitment to diversity, inclusion, and belonging in every sense of those words, right? It's at the heart of our mission. It's at the heart of our leadership principles. And ultimately, the reason why it's so important is because we want to be the home of all developers, right? And in order for us to do that, we have to reflect, celebrate, and support what that actually means, right? And the vibrant diversity that is the global developer community. So like, that's who we are. It's who we will continue to strive to be, and why we are the way that we are, and why we operate the way that we are, and why open source as a whole is such a phenomenal place to be.
I love that. I love that as a home for all of developers. And we got another question from the audience that asked, how does GitHub address the issue of inclusivity and diversity in tech? Well, it sounds like these are some great examples, like the EDI program and just your partnership with Power to Fly. We've partnered for over 2 years together. We're a really robust partnership to hire underrepresented talent. But any other actions kind of behind the scenes, things you can share with us that GitHub is doing to address diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, so I would say that in what we do, there is a bit of philanthropy that is embedded in GitHub. So for those that are not aware, we do have some things internally that we do through social giving, social impact, but more importantly, we are also helping to look at the next stage of technology, and the next really, I couldn't say it any better, besides we have a team that's actually titled GitHub Next, right? Which is looking at not just what we are doing today, but rather beyond the adjacent possibilities, right? So as we think about just continuing to build, continuing to iterate, those are some of the things that we are doing in tandem with one another.
Oh, I love that. I love that. GitHub Next sounds like an amazing program, really kind of thinking of the future of the tech industry, of GitHub, and as that home for all developers. So thanks for that behind the scenes look. So we have another question for the audience. And so this audience member asked more about that future proofing. So how do you build your future on a foundation when the tech industry and AI are rapidly accelerating? Do you think people are going to be left behind in this innovation?
Oh, I never think that people are left behind with innovation. I do think that, and really in tech in general, change is something that is ever constant, right? But within change, there still is that need for the build. Like, who's actually building this, right? Who is selling this, right? Like, who is iterating on it, right? So there are still some things that even factored into tech, right? Factored into AI that does need and does require the human component, right? As we talk about like rapid acceleration, like we still need subject matter experts to be able to rapidly accelerate with us, right? As much as we would love for things to happen on its own, that human component is never going to go away, right? There's nothing more special and more wonderful than being able to jump on a phone with someone or jump on a Zoom in a, in a virtual environment and ask your questions live, or have that human or have that human interaction, because we still exist. We still want that sense to still stay. It's just the way in which we are operating and the way in which we want to continue to operate is at scale. It is to reach as many people as necessary and provide self-service if and when possible, so that you're getting what you need, we're able to deliver in time, and ultimately the world doesn't stop because you cannot get somebody on the phone or you cannot get somebody on a Zoom line.
Yeah, that is so true. We're definitely not going to be able to automate away everything. I've seen these really great comics of like web designer, and they're like, oh yeah, there's still clients, so they can't communicate their needs really well. So we'll still have to have humans. And I even think about in my own job, now I have all these great tools, like my calls are automatically transcribed, and like an AI tool gives me like the action items I need to follow up on. But like, do you know what I mean? Like, we can't automate, at least not yet, we can't automate my job away, but I feel much more efficient being able to use these tools. So I think it's kind of, learning them, how can they, help me be more efficient in my tasks, and, not being afraid of, leveraging them to make you like a better employee.
Yeah, it's really the efficiency. Like, I think personally, AI drives efficiency in the more mundane tasks, right? For lack of a better word. Like, as a developer specifically, the last thing I want to do is get hung up on, oh, my code cannot run because I didn't add in a semicolon, or I, left out a space, or I added in an extra space, right? What AI actually, and at least as a pair programming tool such as Copilot, what it allows, what it really enables is those little things are solved. Therefore, you can actually spend more time seeing if it works, how it works, building the infrastructure for it to work, not necessarily doing the click by click, step by step requirements.
Yeah, well, that, having Copilot help you out there sounds so much more efficient. Well, Gabby, so we've just got 2 more minutes. So I want to give you the final word to close us out. What are your final words of wisdom for our audience today, whether that relates to AI tools for their job search, GitHub's mission as it relates to diversity and inclusion? What kind of do you want our audience to know as we wrap up today's talk?
That, and I only have 2 minutes. Wow. So GitHub powers the open source platform. Like, we know that it powers open source, and ultimately open source powers the world, right? So the possibilities with GitHub, at GitHub, through GitHub is endless, right? Many of the apps and the programs that you all use every day, believe it or not, are built on GitHub, and therefore anything that's done here has global impact to, the world, right? I would say my biggest aha moment joining GitHub was understanding the extensive impact of what we do. So there's a reason why my background today is in space, and that's because GitHub had the opportunity to contribute to the Mars helicopter, right? In addition, some of what we've done enabled black hole, like photos of the black hole that was able to it's just immense how open source can really change and really enhance what we need to do. But even more important, as to the work that I do, hires an individual that is going to be a game changer in developing either the next enhancement to Copilot, or can join our GitHub Next team and really push through any, the different possibilities that are available. And ultimately, what we do here is just exponential, right? But it doesn't just stop with the tools and the softwares that we build, but we're also dedicated to education, and we also leverage tech for social good, right? And lastly, we enable our hubbers, which are GitHub employees, to support the causes and communities that they truly do care about.